When I boarded the plane from Chicago to Los Angeles, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. Business trips had become routine for me. I had grown used to checking in at hotels, living out of a suitcase, and making small talk in elevator rides with other traveling professionals. But this trip was different, not because of the meetings or the clients, but because of who I met. I was representing our tech firm in a large industry conference, scheduled to last a week. Our company had recently merged with another startup based out of San Diego, and part of my task was to network and collaborate with new team members. I had been emailed a list of people to connect with, and one name stuck out to me, Ryan Foster. The name sounded vaguely familiar, maybe from the dozens of virtual meetings we'd had over the last few months. But there had been no video calls, so I had no face to match to the name. I didn't expect much. We were all busy professionals doing our jobs. I checked into my hotel in downtown LA late Sunday afternoon. After a long flight and an even longer Uber ride thanks to traffic, I collapsed onto the bed in my suite and barely unpacked before heading to the welcome mixer in the hotel lounge. It was buzzing with conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses. I scanned the room for anyone from our merged team. And then I saw him. Tall. Athletic build. Confident yet approachable. Ryan was standing near the bar, chatting with a few others, a soft smile on his face that somehow reached his eyes. His presence was commanding not just physically, but in the way he stood, engaged, listened. I recognized his name tag and felt a sudden and unexpected flutter in my chest. I introduced myself, half nervous and half intrigued. "Hey, you must be Ryan. I'm Emily Carter. We've emailed a bunch." He turned, his eyes locking with mine, and offered a warm handshake. "Emily, it's so good to finally meet you in person. I was hoping you'd be here." His voice was rich, deeper than I expected, and his handshake firm but not overbearing. We ended up talking for the next 2 hours. It started with shop talk, mergers, product timelines, Q3 goals, but quickly drifted into personal stories. Ryan had grown up in Denver and recently moved to California. He loved hiking, photography, and apparently had a passion for restoring vintage motorcycles. I told him about my childhood in Ohio, my favorite books, and how I secretly hated sushi but pretended to like it in business settings. There was something so easy about being around him. No forced charm. No ego. Just someone real, grounded. When we finally parted ways that night, I walked back to my room with a smile I couldn't explain. The next few days were packed. Presentations, breakout sessions, dinners with clients. But somehow, Ryan and I always found our way to each other, whether sitting together in sessions, sneaking out for coffee between talks, or ending up at the same restaurant tables during group dinners. Everyone noticed our growing camaraderie, but no one said anything. One evening, after a particularly long day of panel discussions, Ryan knocked on my hotel room door holding 2 paper cups of chamomile tea. "You looked exhausted at the end there," he said with a smile. "Thought you could use this." I invited him in. We sat on the couch and talked like we had known each other for years. It wasn't flirtatious in any overt way, but there was a magnetic pull I couldn't ignore. He told me about his past relationship, how it ended amicably but left him cautious. I shared my own hesitations, how work had consumed me for the past few years, and how I sometimes feared I'd never figure out how to balance it all. At one point, I laughed at something he said, and he looked at me, really looked, in that way people do when they see you not just for what you are, but for who you are. "You have a great laugh," he said softly. My cheeks flushed. "Thanks. You're not so bad yourself." There was a pause, one of those moments where the air gets heavy, charged, full of meaning. Then he leaned back and changed the subject, giving us both space. But the moment stayed. The next day was the final one of the conference, and we both had early flights the following morning. That evening, there was a closing rooftop cocktail party. The LA skyline shimmered, music played softly in the background, and people mingled with champagne flutes and small bites. I wore a dark green dress I hadn't worn in over a year. Something about that night made me want to feel a little different, a little more present. Ryan saw me from across the rooftop and gave a long, appreciative look that didn't feel uncomfortable, it felt warm. Safe. Admired. "You clean up nice," he joked when he reached me. I elbowed him playfully. So do you. Though I still think your badge lanyard ruins the look. We talked, danced once, and stood together watching the skyline. He talked about maybe coming to Chicago for a collaborative pitch next quarter, and I offered to show him the city. The energy between us was undeniable, but it wasn't rushed. There was no pressure, no assumptions. Just understanding. Curiosity. Something unspoken but powerful. As the party began to wind down, Ryan walked me back to my hotel room. At my door, we paused. Well, I said, searching for the right words, this week turned out a lot more memorable than I thought. He nodded, his eyes soft. Yeah. Me too. For a second, I thought he might lean in. Instead, he gently took my hand. I'm glad we met, Emily. Me too, Ryan. And then he let go and walked away. Just like that. I didn't sleep much that night, my mind spinning. There had been something about the way he looked at me, like I wasn't just another coworker or someone passing through. The truth is, I hadn't felt seen in a long time, not since my last relationship ended 2 years ago. The next morning at the airport, we ran into each other at the security checkpoint. After checking in our bags and grabbing coffees, we sat at a quiet gate and talked until boarding. No grand goodbyes. Just gratitude. A hug that lasted a second longer than usual. Back in Chicago, life went on. Work picked up. Deadlines loomed. But something had shifted. Ryan and I kept in touch. First through emails about projects, then texts about our days. Photos. Memes. Playlists. Before long, video calls became weekly, then daily. The friendship grew in depth and warmth. A few weeks later, Ryan flew to Chicago for a team presentation. We both knew this trip would be different. I met him at the airport, and as soon as I saw him, that familiar warmth came rushing back. We spent the weekend together, touring the city, eating deep dish pizza, laughing in bookstores, and walking along the lake. One evening, it started to rain while we were walking through Lincoln Park. We ran for cover under a tree, soaking wet and breathless. I can't believe we're doing this, I laughed, wiping water from my forehead. Ryan looked at me, eyes twinkling. I can. And that time, he did lean in. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deeper, like we had both been waiting for it without knowing how much. After that trip, we didn't try to label things too quickly. We respected the friendship we'd built, the connection that had grown not just from attraction, but from mutual care, values, and understanding. Over the next few months, we visited each other, met each other's friends, and navigated next story.